So, good day. So, I am Abdul Wahid Abdul Majid. At ngayon ay mag-discuss natin ang tungkol sa Philippine Electrical Code. So, in Chapter 4, Equipment for General Use. So, Article 4.0, so flexible cords and cables. So, these articles covers general requirements, application, and construction specification for flexible cords and flexible cables. So, flexible cords and flexible cables shall comply with this article and with the applicable provision of other articles. So, flexible cords and flexible cables and their associated fittings shall be suitable for the conditions of use and locations. So, Chapter 4.0.1.4, so flexible cords and flexible cables shall conform to this description in Table 4.0.1.4. So, Chapter 4.0.1.5, so ampacity for flexible cords and cables. So, Table 4.0.1.5 so provides the allowable ampacities, and Table 4.0.1.5 A2 provides the ampacities for flexible cords and flexible cables with not more than 3 current carrying conductors. So B, say ultimate insulation temperature. So in no case shall conductor be associated together in such a way with respect to the kind of circuit, the wiring method used, or the number of conductors such that limiting temperature of the conductor is exceeded. So C, engineering supervision. So under engineering supervision, conductor ampacities shall be permitted to be calculated in accordance with Chapter 3.10.2.6c. So Chapter 4.0.1.6, so markings, so standard markings. So flexible cords and flexible cables shall be marked by means of a printed tag attached to the coil, rail, or cartoon. So the tag shall contain the information required in Chapter 3.10.3.17a. So types S, SC, SCA, AO, SEOO, SG, SGE, SGEO, SGEOO, SGO, SGT, SGTO, SGTOO, SG, ST, STO, STOO, SEW, SOW, SEOO, and so on and so forth. So, and flexible cords and GC, PP, and W. Flexible cables shall be durably marked on the surface at intervals not exceeding 610 mm with the type designation, size, and number of conductors. So required markings on tags, cords, and cables shall also include the maximum operating temperature of the flexible cord or flexible cable. So B, optional markings. So flexible cords and cables types listed in Table 4.0.1.4 shall be permitted to be surface marked to indicate special characteristics of the cable materials. These markings include but are not limited to markings for limited smoke, sunlight resistance, and so forth. So Chapter 4.0.1.10 uses permitted. So A, uses. So flexible cords and flexible cables shall be used only for the following. So number 1 is the pendants. Second one is the wiring of luminaries, connection of portable luminaries, portable and mobile signs or appliances. Number 4 is the elevator cables. Number 5, wiring of cranes and hoists. Number 6, connection of utilization equipment to facilitate frequent interchange. Number 7, prevention of the transmission of noise or vibration. Number 8, appliances where the fastening means and the mechanical connection are specifically designed to permit ready removal for maintenance and repair, and the appliance is intended or identified for flexible cord connection. Number 9, connection of moving parts. Number 10, were specifically permitted elsewhere in this code. So, and number 11, so between an existing receptacle outlet and an inlet, where the inlet provides power to an additional single receptacle outlet. So the wiring interconnecting the inlet to the single receptacle outlet shall be in Chapter 3 wiring method. So the inlet, receptacle outlet, and Chapter 3 wiring method, including the flexible cord and fittings, shall be listed assembly specific for this application. So B, attachment plugs. So were used as permitted in Chapter 4.0.1.10 A3 and A6 and A8. Each flexible cord shall be equipped with an attachment plug and shall be energized from a receptacle outlet or cord connector body. Chapter 4.0.1.12, so use is not permitted. So unless specifically permitted in Chapter 4.0.1.10, so flexible cord sets and power supply cord shall not be used for the following. So number 1, so as a substitute for the fixed wiring of a structure. Number 2, will run through holes in walls, structural ceilings, suspended ceilings, drop ceilings, or floors. So will run through doorways, windows, or similar openings. So we're attached to building surface. So exception to number 4. So flexible cord and flexible cable shall be permitted to be attached to the building surfaces in accordance with the provision of Chapter 3.68.2.47b. So were concealed by walls, floors, or ceilings, or located above suspended or drop ceilings. So exception to number 5. So flexible cords and cable shall be permitted if contained within an enclosure for use in other spaces used for environmental air as permitted by Chapter 3.0.1.22c3. So number 6, were installed in raceways, except as otherwise permitted in this code. So number 7, were subject to physical damage. So Chapter 4.0.1.13, so splices. So flexible cord shall be used only in continuous links without splice or top, or initially installed in applications permitted by Chapter 4.0.1.10a. So the repair of hard service cord and junior hard service cord, so see trade name in the table 4.0.1.4, so 2.0 mm squared or 1.6 mm diameter, and larger shall be permitted if conductor are spliced in accordance with Chapter 1.10.1.14b, and the completed splice retains the insulation, outer sheet properties, and usage characteristics of the cords being spliced. Chapter 4.0.1.14, so pull at joints and terminals. The flexible cords and flexible cables shall be connected to devices and to fittings so that tension is not transmitted to joints or terminals. So exceptions, so listed portable single pole devices that are intended to accommodate such tension at their terminals shall be permitted to be used with single conductor flexible cable. Chapter 4.0.1.15, so in show windows and showcases. So flexible cords used in show windows and showcases shall be types S, SE, SEO, SEOO, SG, SGE, SGEO, SGEOO, SGO, SGOO, etc. So exceptions, number 1, so for the wiring of chain supported luminaries. So exception number 2, so a supply cords for portable luminaries and other merchandise being displayed or exhibited. So Chapter 4.0.1.16, so overcurrent protections. So flexible cords not smaller than 0.75 mm squared or 1.0 mm diameter and tensile cords or cords having equivalent characteristics of smaller size approved for use with specific appliances shall be considered as protected against overcurrent in accordance with Chapter 2.40.1.5. Chapter 4.0.1.17, so protection from damages. So flexible cords and flexible cables shall be protected by bushings or fittings where passing through holes in covers, outlets, boxes, or similar enclosures. So in industrial establishments where the condition of maintenance and supervision ensure that only qualified persons service installation, flexible cords and flexible cables shall be permitted to be installed in above-ground raceways that are no longer than 15,000 mm to protect the flexible cord or flexible cable from physical damage. So, for more than 3 current-carrying conductor installed within raceway, so the allowable capacity shall be reduced in accordance with Table 4.0.1.5A3. So chapter 4.0.2.1, so labels, so about construction specifications. So flexible cord shall be examined and tested at the factory and labeled before shipment. So chapter 4.0.2.2, so about the construction. So A, the conductors. So the individual conductors of a flexible cord or flexible cable shall have a copper flexible stranding and shall not be smaller than the size specified in Table 4.0.1.4. So B, nominal insulation thickness. So the nominal thickness of insulation for conductors of flexible cords and flexible cables shall not be less than specified in Table 4.0.1.4. 4.0.2.3, so grounded conductor identification. So one conductor of flexible cords that is intended to be used as a grounded circuit conductor shall have a continuous marker that readily distinguishes it from the outer conductor or conductors. The identification shall consist of one of the methods indicated in Chapter 4.0.2.3 A through F. So A, so colored bead. A colored bead finish to show white or gray color that the bead on the other conductor or conductors finish to show a readily distinguishable solid color or colors. So B, tracer in bread. So a tracer in bread of any color contrasting with that of the bread and no tracer in the bread of the other conductor or conductors. No tracer shall be used in the bread of any conductor of a flexible cord that contains a conductor having a bread finish to show white or gray. So exception. So in the case of types C and PD and cords having the breads of the individual conductor finish to show white or gray, in such cords the identifying marker shall be permitted to consist of the solid white or gray finish on one conductor, provided there is a colored tracer in the bread of each other conductor. So C, colored insulation. A white or gray insulation on one conductor and insulation of readily distinguishable color or colors on the other conductor or conductors for cords having no breads on the individual conductors. For jack cords furnished with appliances, one conductor having its insulation colors light blue with the other conductors having their insulations of a readily distinguishable color other than white or gray. So exception, so cords that have insulation on the individual conductor integral with the jacket. So the insulation shall be permitted to be covered with an outer finish to provide the desired color. So D, colored separator. A white or gray separator on one conductor and the separator of a readily distinguishable solid color on the other conductor or conductors of cords having insulation on the individual conductors integral with the jacket. So E, thinned conductors. So one conductor having the individual strands thinned and the other conductor or conductors having individual strands unthinned for cords having insulation on the individual conductors integral with the jacket. So F, surface markings. So one or more ridges, grooves, or white stripes located on the exterior of the cord so as to identify one conductor for cords having insulation on the individual conductor integral with the jacket. Chapter 4.0.2.4, so equipment grounding conductor identification. So a conductor intended to be used as an equipment grounding conductor shall be a continuous identifying marker readily distinguishing it from the other conductor or conductors. So conductor having continuous green color or a continuous green color with one or more yellow stripes shall not be used for other than equipment grounding conductors. So cords or cables consisting of integral insulation in jacket without a non-integral grounding conductor shall be permitted to be green. So the identifying marker shall consist of one or of the methods in chapter 4.0.2.4 A or B. So A, colored bleed. A bleed finish to show a continuous green color or a continuous green color with one or more yellow stripes. So B, colored insulation or covering. So for cords having new beads on the individual conductors, an insulation of a continuous green color or continuous green color with one or more yellow stripes. So chapter 4.0.2.5, so attachment plugs. So where a flexible cord is provided with an equipment grounding conductor and equipped with an attachment plug, so the attachment plug shall comply with chapter 2.50.7.9 A and B. So portable cables over 600 volts nominal. So chapter 4.0.1, so part 4.0.3 applies to single and multi-conductor portable cables used to connect mobile equipment and machinery. Chapter 4.0.3.2 construction. So A, conductors. So the conductor shall be 3.5 mm squared or 2.0 mm in diameter. So copper or larger and shall employ flexible stranding. B, equipment grounding conductors. So an equipment grounding conductor shall be provided in cables with 3 or more conductors. So the total area shall not be less than that of the size of the equipment grounding conductor required in chapter 2.50.6.13. So chapter 4.0.3.3, so all shields shall be connected to an equipment grounding conductor. So chapter 4.0.3.4, so equipment grounding conductors. So equipment grounding conductor shall be connected in accordance with part 2.50.6 and part 2.50.7. So chapter 4.0.3.5, so minimum bending radii. The minimum bending radii for portable cables during installation and handling in service shall be adequate to prevent damage to the cable. So chapter 4.0.36, three things. Connectors used to connect lengths of cable in a run shall be of a type that locks firmly together. So provision shall be made to prevent opening or closing these connectors while energized. So suitable means shall be used to eliminate tension at connectors and terminators. Chapter 4.0.3.7, splice and termination. So portable cable shall not contain splices unless the splices are of the permanent molded. So vulcanized types in accordance with chapter 1.10.1.14. B, terminations on portable cables rated over 600 volts nominal shall be accessible only to authorized and qualified personnel. So Article 4.2, fixtures wires. So this article covers general requirement and construction specification for fixture wires. So chapter 4.2.1.2. So fixture wires shall comply with this article and also with the applicable provision of other articles of this code. So chapter 4.2.1.3. So fixture wires shall be a type listed in table 4.2.1.3 and they shall comply with all requirements of the table. The fixture wires listed in table 4.2.1.3 are suitable for services at 600 volts nominal unless otherwise specified. So chapter 4.2.1.5, so allowable ampacities for fixture wires. So the allowable ampacity of fixture wires shall be as specified in table 4.2.1.5. So no conductor shall be used under such conditions that its operating temperature exceeds the temperature specified in table 4.3.1.3 for the type of insulation involved. So chapter 4.2.1.6, so the minimum size. So fixture wires shall not be smaller than 0.75 mm squared or 1.0 in diameter. So chapter 4.2.1.7, number of conductors in conduit or tubing. The number of fixture wires permitted in a single conduit or tubing shall not exceed the percentage fill specified in table 10.1.1.1. So chapter 4.2.1.8, grounded conductor identification. So fixture wires that are intended to be used as grounded conductors shall be identified by one or more continuous white stripes on other than green insulation or by means described in 4.0.2.3 A through F. So chapter 4.2.1.9, so markings. So A, method of marking. So thermoplastic insulated fixtures wire shall be durably marked on the surface at the intervals not exceeding 610 mm. So all the fixture wire shall be marked by means of a printed tag attached to the coil, reel, or cartoon. So B, optional markings. So fixture wires shall be permitted first for installation in luminaries and in similar to be surface marked to indicate special characteristics of the cable materials. So these markings includes but are not limited to markings for limited smoke, sunlight resistance, and so forth. So chapter 4.2.1.14, so overcurrent protection. So overcurrent protection for fixture wires shall be as specified in chapter 2.4.1.5. So here is the table for the fixture wires and the allowable ampacity for fixture wires. So article 4.4, switches. So chapter 4.4.1.1, so the provision of this article apply to all switches, switching devices, and circuit breakers used as switches operating at 1000 volts and below, unless specifically referenced elsewhere in this code for higher voltages. So chapter 4.4.1.2, switches connections. So first is the 3-way and 4-way switches. So 3-way and 4-way switches shall be wired so that all switching is done only in the ungrounded circuit conductor. So where in metal raceway or metal armored cables, wiring between switches and outlets shall be in accordance with chapter 3.0.1.20a. So exception, so switch loops shall not required as a grounded conductor. So B, grounded conductors, so switches or circuit breaker shall not be disconnect the grounded conductor of a circuit. So exception, a switch or circuit breaker shall be permitted to disconnect a grounded circuit conductor where all circuit conductors are disconnected simultaneously, or where the device is arranged so that the grounded cannot be disconnected until all the ungrounded conductors of the circuit have been disconnected. C. Switches controlling lighting loads. So the grounded circuit conductor for the controlled lighting circuit conductor shall be installed at the location where switches control lighting loads that are supplied by a grounded general purpose branch circuit serving bathroom, hallways, stairways, or rooms suitable for human habitation or occupancy as defined in the applicable building code. So, where multiple switches location control the same lighting loads such that the entire floor area of the room or space is visible from the single or combined switch locations, the grounded circuit conductor shall only be required at one location. A grounded conductor shall not be required to be installed at a lighting switch location under any of the following conditions. So first, where conductors enter the box enclosing the switch through a raceway, provided that the raceway is large enough for a contained conductors, including a grounded conductor. The second is where the box enclosing the switch is accessible for the installation of an additional or replacement cable without removing finished materials. The third is where snap switches with integral enclosures comply with Chapter 3.0.1.15e. So, fourth, where lighting in the area is controlled by automatic means. And the last is where a switch controls a receptacle load. So the grounded conductor shall be extended to any switchboard location as necessary and shall be connected to switching devices that require line to neutral voltage to operate the electronics of the switch in the standby mode and shall meet the requirements of Chapter 4.4.2.3. The exception for this, so the connection requirement shall become effective on January 1, 2020. It shall not apply to replacement or retrofit switches installed in locations prior to local adoption of Chapter 4.1.2c and where the grounded conductor cannot be extended without removing finished materials. So the number of electronic lighting control switches on a branch circuit shall not exceed 5, and the number connected to any feeder on the load side of a system or main banding jumper shall not exceed 25. So for the purpose of this exception, a neutral bus bar in compliance with Chapter 2.0.1.2b and to which a main or lighting control switches connected. So Chapter 4.1.3, so in general, so switches and circuit breakers shall be of the externally operable type mounted in an enclosure listed for the intended use. So the minimum wire bending space at terminals and minimum gutter space provided in switch enclosures shall be as required in Chapter 3.12.1.6. So exception number 1. So fendant and surface type snap switches and knife switches mounted on an open face switchboard or panel board shall be permitted without enclosures. So exception number 2. So switches and circuit breakers installed in accordance with Chapter 1.10.2.2. So A2, A3, and E4 shall be permitted without enclosures. So B. So use as a raceway. So enclosure shall not be used as a junction box, auxiliary, cutters, or raceways for conductors feeding through or topping off to other switches or overcurrent devices, unless the enclosure complies with 3.12.1.8. So for Chapter 4.4.1.4, so dump or weight locations. So A. Surface mounted switch or circuit breaker. So a surface mounted switch or circuit breaker shall be enclosed in a weatherproof of enclosure or cabinet that shall comply with Chapter 3.12.1.2. So B. Flush mounted switch or circuit breaker. So a flush mounted switch or circuit breaker shall be equipped with a weatherproof cover. So letter C. So switches in tub or shower spaces. So shall not be installed within tubs or shower spaces unless installed as part of listed tubs. Chapter 4.4.1.5, so time switches, flashers, and similar devices. So time switches, flashers, and similar devices shall be of the enclosed type or shall be mounted in the cabinets or boxes or equipment enclosures. So energized parts shall be barriered to prevent operator exposure when making manual adjustments or switchings. So exceptions, so devices mounted so they are accessible only to qualified persons shall be permitted without barriers. So provided they are located within an enclosure such that any energized parts within 152 mm of the manual adjustments or switch are covered by suitable barriers. So chapter 4.4.1.6, so position and connection of switches. So A, single through knife switches. So single through knife switches shall be placed so that the gravity will not tend to close them. So single through knife switches approved for use in the inverted position shall be provided with an integral mechanical means that ensures that the blades remains in the open position when so set. So B, double through knife switch. The double through knife switch shall be permitted to be mounted so that the through is either vertical or horizontal. So where the through is vertical, integral mechanical means shall be provided. So hold the blades in the open position when it's so set. So C, connection of switches. So single through knife switches and switches with butt contact shall be connected such that their blades are de-energized when the switch is in the open position. So bolted pressure contact switch shall have barriers that prevent inadvertent contact with energized blades. So single through knife switch, bolted pressure contact switch, molded case switches, switches with butt contacts, and circuit breakers such as switches shall be connected so that the terminals supplying the load are de-energized when the switch is in the open position. The exception, so the blades are terminals and terminals supplying the load of a switch shall be permitted to be energized when the switch is in the open position where the switch is connected to circuits or equipment inherently capable of providing a back-feed source of power. So for such installation, a permanent sign shall be installed on the switch enclosure or immediately adjacent to open switches with the following words or equivalent. So warning load side terminals energized by back-feed. So the warning sign or label shall comply with chapter 1.10.1.12d. Chapter 4.4.1.7, so indicating, so general use and motor circuit switches, circuit breakers, and molded case switches were mounted in an enclosure as described in chapter 4.4.1.3. So shall it clearly indicate whether they are in the open or off, so or closed or on, so position, where this switch or circuit breaker handles are operated vertically rather than rotationally or horizontally. So the up position of the handle shall be closed or on position. So exception number 1. So vertically operated double through switches shall be permitted to be in a closed or on position with the handle in either the up or down position. Exception number 2, on busway installations, so top switches employing a center pivoting handles shall be permitted to be open or closed with either width end of the handle in the up or down position. So the switch position shall be clearly indicating and shall be visible from the floor or from the usual point of operation. So chapter 4.4.1.8, so accessibility and grouping, so location. So all switches and circuit breakers used as switches will be located so that they may be operated from a readily accessible place. They shall be installed such that the center of the operating handle of the switch or circuit breakers, when it's in the highest position, it is not more than 2000 millimeter above the floor or working platform. So exception number 1. So on busway installation, so fuse switches and circuit breakers shall be permitted to be located at the same level as the busway. Suitable means shall be provided to operate the handle of the device from the floor. Exception number 2. So switches and circuit breakers installed adjacent to motors, appliances, or other equipment that they supply shall be permitted to be located higher than 2000 mm to be accessible by portable means. Exception number 3. Hoopstick operated isolating switches shall be permitted at greater heights. So B. Voltage between adjacent devices. So a snap switch shall not be grouped or ganged in enclosures with other snap switches, receptacles, or similar devices, unless they are arranged so that the voltage between adjacent devices does not exceed 300 volts, or unless they are installed in enclosure equipped with identified securely installed barriers between adjacent devices. So C. Multiple snap switches. A multiple general use snap switch shall not be permitted to be fed from more than a single circuit unless it is listed and marked as a 2-circuit or 3-circuit switch. So chapter 4.4.1.9, so provision for general use snap switch. So first is the faceplates. So faceplates provided for snap switches mounted in the boxes and other enclosures shall be installed so as to completely cover the opening and where the switch is flush mounted sit against the finished surface. So B. Grounding. So snap switches including dimmer and similar control switches shall be connected to an equipment grounding conductor and shall provided a means to connect metal faceplates so that the equipment grounding conductor, whether or not a metal faceplate is installed. So metal faceplates shall be grounded. Snap switches shall be considered to be part of an effective ground fault current path if either of the following condition is met. So the switch is mounted with metal screws to a metal box or metal cover that is connected to an equipment grounding conductor or to a non-metallic box with integral means for connecting to an equipment grounding conductor. An equipment grounding conductor or equipment mounting jumper is connected to an equipment grounding termination of the snap switch. Exception number 1 to B. So where no means to exist within the snap switch enclosure for connecting to the equipment grounding conductor, or where the wiring method does not include or provide an equipment grounding conductor, a snap switch without a connection to an equipment grounding conductor shall be permitted for replacements purposes only. So a snap switch wired under the provision of these exceptions and located within 2500 mm vertically or 1500 mm horizontally of ground or exposed grounded metal objects shall be provided with the faceplates of non-conducting, non-combustible material with non-metallic attachment screws, unless the switch mounting strap or yoke is non-metallic or the circuit is protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter. Exception number 2 to B. So listed kits or listed assemblies shall not require to be connected to an equipment grounding conductor if all of the following conditions are met. So the device is provided with a non-metallic faceplate that cannot be installed on any other type of device. So the device does not have mounting meant to accept other configuration of faceplates. So number 3, the device is equipped with a non-metallic yoke, and last, all parts of the device that are accessible after installation of the faceplates are manufactured of non-metallic materials. So exception number 3 to B. So a snap switch with integral non-metallic enclosure complying with chapter 3.0.1.15e so shall be permitted without a connection to an equipment grounding conductor. So letter C. Construction. So metal faceplates shall be of a ferrous metal not less than 0.76 mm in thickness or non-ferrous metal not less than 1.0 mm in thickness. Of insulating material should be non-combustible and not less than 2.54 in thickness, but these shall be permitted to less than 2.54 millimeter in thickness if formed or reinforced to provide adequate mechanical strength. So chapter 4.1.10, so mounting of snap switch. So first is the surface type. So snap switches used with an open wiring or on insulator shall be mounted on the insulating material that separates the conductors at least 13 mm from the surface wired over. So B, box mounted. So flash type snap switches mounted in the boxes that are set back of the finished surface as permitted in chapter 3.14.2.6, so shall be installed so that the extension plaster ears are seated against the surface. So flash type snap switch mounted in the box that are flush with the finished surface or project from it shall be installed so that the mounting yoke or strap of the switch is seated against the box. So screws used for the purpose of attaching a snap switch to a box shall be of the type provided with a listed snap switch, or shall be machine screws have 32 threads per inch or part of listed assemblies or systems in accordance with the manufacturer's instruction. So chapter 4.1.11, so circuit breakers as switches. So a hand-operable circuit breaker equipped with a lever or handle, or a power-operated circuit breaker capable of being opened by hand in the event of a power failure, so shall be permitted to serve as a switch if it has the required number of pulls. So chapter 4.4.1.12, so grounding enclosures. So metal enclosures for switches or circuit breaker shall be connected to an equipment grounding conductor as specified in part 2.50.4. So metal enclosures for switches or circuit breakers used as service equipment shall comply with the provision of part 2.50.5, where non-metallic enclosure are used with metal raceways or metal armored cables. Provision shall be made for connecting the equipment grounding conductors, except as covered in chapter 4.4.1.9b, exception number 1, non-metallic boxes for switches shall be installed with a wiring method that provides or includes an equipment grounding conductor. Chapter 4.1.13, knife switches. So first is the isolating switches. Knife switches rated at over 1200 amperes at 250 volts or less, and at over 1000 amperes at 251 to 1000 volts shall be used only as isolating switches and shall not be opened under load. So B, to interrupt currents. So to interrupt currents over 1200 amperes at 250 volts nominal or less, or over 600 amperes at 251 to 600 volts nominal, a circuit breaker or a switch of special design listed for such purpose shall be used. So letter C, general use switches. So knife switches of ratings less than specified in chapter 4.4.1.13a and B shall be considered general use switches. And D, motor circuit switches. So motor circuit switches shall be permitted to be of the knife switches type. Chapter 4.4.1.14, rating in use of snap switches. So switches shall be used within the ratings and as indicated in chapter 4.4.1.14a through F. So A, alternating current general use snap switch, a form of general use snap switch suitable only for use on AC circuits for controlling the following. So first, resistive and inductive loads not exceeding the ampere rating of the switch at the voltage applied. And the second is the tungsten filament lamp loads not exceeding the ampere rating of the switch at 230 or 115 volts. And the last, the motor loads not exceeding 80% of the ampere rating of the switch as it rated voltage. B, alternating current or direct current general use snap switch. So a form of general use snap switch suitable for use on either AC or DC circuit for controlling the following. So first, resistive loads not exceeding the ampere rating of the switch at the voltage applied. The second is the inductive loads not exceeding 50% of the ampere rating of the switch at the voltage at the applied voltage. So switches rated in horsepower are suitable for controlling motor loads within the rating at the voltage applied. Number 3. Tungsten filament lamp load not exceeding the ampere rating of the switch at the applied voltage if the T rated CO or ELR snap switches. So snap switches rated 20 amperes or less directly connected to aluminum conductor shall be listed and marked CO or ELR. So D. Alternating current specific use snap switch rated for 347 volts. So snap switches rated 347 volts. AC shall be listed and shall be used only for controlling the loads permitted by D1 and D2. So 1. Non-inductive loads. Non-inductive loads other than tungsten filament lamps not exceeding the ampere and voltage rating of the switches. 2. Inductive loads. So the inductive loads not exceeding the ampere and voltage rating of the switches where particular load characteristics or limitations are specified as condition of the listing. Those restrictions shall be observed regardless of the ampere rating of the load. The ampere rating of the switch shall not be less than 15 ampere at a voltage rating of 347 volts AC. So flash type snap switches rated 347 volts AC shall not be readily interchangeable in box mounting with switches identified in chapter 4.4.1.14a and b. E. Dimmer switches. So general use dimmer switches will be used only to control permanently installed incandescent luminaries unless listed for the control of other loads and installed accordingly. So if F. Cord and plug connected loads where a snap switch or control device is used to control cord and plug connected equipment on a general purpose branch circuit, each snap switch or control device controlling receptacle outlets or cord connectors that are supplied by permanently connected cord pendants shall be rated at not less than the rating of the maximum permitted ampere rating or setting of the overcurrent device protecting the receptacles or cords connector as provided in chapter 2.10.2.4b. Exception. So where a snap switch or control device is used to control not more than one receptacle on a branch circuit, the switch or control device shall be permitted to be rated at not less than the rating of the receptacle. So chapter 4. Part 4.4.2, so construction specification. So chapter 4.4.2.1. So marking first is the ratings. So switches shall be marked with the current, voltage, and if horsepower rated, the maximum rating for which they are designated. So B. Off indication, where in the off position a switching device with the mark off position shall completely disconnect all ungrounded conductors to the load it controls. Chapter 4.4.2.3 Electronic lighting control switches. So electronic lighting control switches shall be listed. Electronic lighting control switches shall not introduce current on the equipment grounding conductor during normal operation. Exception. So electronic lighting control switches that introduce current on the equipment grounding conductor shall be permitted for appliances covered by chapter 4.4.1.2c. Grounding conductor shall be listed and marked for use in replacement or retrofit appliances only. Chapter 4.2.7, so knife switches rated 600 to 1000 volts. So auxiliary contacts of a renewable or quick break type or the equivalent shall be provided in all knife switches rated 600 to 1000 volts and designated for use in breaking current over 200 amperes. Chapter 4.4.2.8, so fuse switches. So a fuse switch shall not have fuses in parallel except as permitted in Chapter 2.40.1.8. So Chapter 4.4.2.9, so wire bending space. So the wire bending space required by Chapter 4.4.1.3 shall met Table 3.12.1.6b, spacings to the enclosure wall opposite the line and load terminals. So Article 4.6, so receptacles, cords, connectors, and attachment plugs or the cups. So this article covers the rating, type, and installation of receptacles, cord, connectors, and attachment plugs. So Chapter 4.6.1.2 is the definitions, child care facility, a building or structure or portion 3 thereof for educational, supervisory, or personal care services for more than 4 children or 7 years old or less. So outlet box hood, so a housing shell intended to fit over a faceplate for flash-mounted wiring devices or an integral component of an outlet box or of a faceplate for flash-mounted wiring device. The hood does not serve to complete the electrical enclosure. It reduces the risk of water coming in contact with electrical components within the hood, such as attachment plugs, current taps, surge protective devices, direct plug-in transformer units, or wiring devices. Chapter 4.6.1.3, so receptacle rating and type. So A, receptacles. So receptacles shall be listed and marked with manufacturer's name or identification and voltage ampere rating. So B, ratings. So receptacle and cord connector shall be rated not less than 15 amperes, 125 volts, or 15 amperes, 250 volts, and shall be of a type not suitable for a use as lamp holders. C, receptacles for aluminum conductors. So receptacles rated 20 ampere or less and designated for the direct connection of aluminum conductor shall be marked CO or ELR. So D, isolated ground receptacle. So receptacles incorporating an isolated grounding conductor connection intended for the reduction of electrical noise, magnetic interference as permitted in Chapter 2.50.7.17d shall be identified by an orange triangle located on the face of the receptacle. First, isolated equipment grounding conductor required. So receptacles so identified shall be used only with equipment grounding conductor that are isolated in accordance with Chapter 2.50.7.17d. So second is the installation in non-metallic boxes. Isolated ground receptacle installed in non-metallic boxes shall be covered with a non-metallic faceplate. So exceptions for this, so where an isolated ground receptacle is installed in a non-metallic box, a metal faceplate shall be permitted if the box contains features or accessory that permits the effective grounding of the faceplate. Letter E, controlled receptacle markings. All non-locking type 125 or 250 volts, 15 and 20 amperes receptacle that are controlled by an automatic control device or the incorporate control features that remove power from the receptacle for the purpose of energy management or building automation shall be permanently marked with the symbol shown in figure 4.6.1.3e and the word controlled. So for receptacles controlled by automatic control device, the marking shall be located on the receptacle face and visible after installation. In both cases, where multiple receptacle device is used, so the required marking of the word controlled and symbols shall denote which contact device are controlled. Exception, the marking shall not be required for receptacles controlled by a wool switch that provides the required room lighting outlets as permitted by Chapter 2.10.3.21. So here is the symbol for the control. So it is figure 4.6.1.3. So F, receptacle with USB charger. The 125 or 250 volts, 15 or 20 ampere receptacle that additionally provides Class 2 power shall be listed and constructed such that the Class 2 circuitry is integral with the receptacle. Chapter 4.6.1.4, so general installation requirements. So receptacle outlets shall be located in a branch circuits in accordance with Part 2.10.3. The general installation requirements shall be in accordance with Chapter 4.6.1.4a through F. So A, grounding type. So except as provided in Chapter 4.6.1.4d, so receptacle installed on 15 and 20 ampere branch circuits shall be of the grounding type. Grounding type receptacle shall be installed only on circuits of the voltage class and current for which they are rated, except as provided in Table 2.10.2.4b2 and Table 2.10.2.4b. So B, to be grounded, so receptacles and cord connectors that have equipment grounding conductor contacts shall have those contacts connected to an equipment grounding conductors. Exception number 1. So receptacles mounted on portable and vehicle mounted generator in accordance with Chapter 2.50.2.15. So exception number 2, replacement receptacles as permitted by Chapter 4.6.1.4d. C. Methods of grounding. The equipment grounding conductors, contacts of receptacles and cord connectors shall be grounded by the connection to the equipment. The grounding conductor of the circuit supplying the receptacle or cord connector. D. Replacements. The replacement of receptacle shall comply with Chapter 4.6.1.4d1 through d6. As applicable, ground fault circuit interrupter type receptacle shall be installed in a readily accessible location. So number 1, grounding type receptacles. Where grounding means exists in the receptacle, enclosures, or an equipment grounding conductor is installed in accordance with Chapter 2.50.7.1c, grounding type receptacles shall be used and shall be connected to the equipment grounding conductor in accordance with Chapter 4.6.1.4c or 2.50.7.1c. Number 2, the non-grounding type receptacles, where attachment to an equipment grounding conductor does not exist in the receptacle enclosures. The installation shall comply with D2A, D2B, or D2C. A non-grounding type receptacles shall be permitted to be replaced with another non-grounding type receptacles. So B, a non-grounding type receptacles shall be permitted to be replaced with a ground fault circuit interrupter type of receptacles. These receptacles or their cover plates shall be marked No Equipment Ground. An equipment grounding conductor shall not be connected from the ground fault circuit interrupter type receptacle to any outlet supplied from the ground fault circuit interrupter receptacle. Letter C. A non-grounding type receptacle shall be permitted to be replaced with the grounding type receptacles were supplied through a ground fault circuit interrupter. Where grounding type receptacles are supplied to the ground fault circuit interrupter, grounding type receptacles on their cover plates shall be marked GFCI protected and No Equipment Ground. Visible after installation, an equipment grounding conductor shall not be connected between grounding type receptacles. Number 3, ground fault circuit interrupters or GFCI. So ground fault circuit interrupter protected receptacles should be provided where replacements are made and at receptacle outlets that are required to be so protected elsewhere in this code. So exception for this, so where replacement of the receptacle type is impracticable, such as where the outlet box size will not permit the installation of the GFCI receptacle. So the receptacle shall be permitted to be replaced with a new receptacle of the existing type, where GFCI protection is provided and the receptacle is marked GFCI protected and No Equipment Ground. in accordance with Chapter 4.6.1.4 D2A, B, or C as applicable. Number 4, tamper-resistant receptacles. The listed tamper-resistant receptacles shall be provided where replacements are made at receptacle outlets that are required to be tamper-resistant elsewhere in this code, except where a non-grounding receptacle is replaced with another non-grounding receptacle. Number 5, weather-resistant receptacles. So weather-resistant receptacles shall be provided where replacements are made at receptacles outlets that are required to be so protected elsewhere in this code. So E, cord and plug connected equipment. The installation of grounding type receptacle shall not be used as requirement that all cord and plug connected equipment be of the grounded type. So F, non-interchangeable types. So receptacles connected to circuits that have different voltage frequencies or types of current, AC or DC, on the same premises shall be of such design that the attachment plugs used on these circuits are not interchangeable. Chapter 4.6.1.5, so receptacles mounting. So receptacles shall be mounted in identified boxes or assemblies. The box or assemblies shall be securely fastened in place unless otherwise permitted elsewhere in this code. Screws used for the purpose of attaching receptacles to a box shall be of the type provided with listed receptacle or shall be machine screws having 32 threads per inch or part of listed assemblies or systems in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. So A, boxes that are set back. The receptacles mounted in the boxes that are set back from the finished surface as permitted in Chapter 3.14.2.6 shall be installed such that the mounting yoke or the strap of the receptacle is held rigidly at the finished surface. B, boxes that are flush. Receptacles mounted in the boxes that are flush with the finished surface or project, so therefrom shall be installed such the mounting yoke or strap of the receptacle is held rigidly against the box or box cover. C, receptacles mounted on covers. The receptacles mounted to and supported by a cover shall be held rigidly against the cover by more than one screw or shall be a device assembly or box cover listed and identified securing by a single screw. D, position of receptacle faces. After installation, receptacle faces shall be flush with or project from faceplates, insulating materials and shall project a minimum of 0.4 mm from metal faceplates. Exception. So listed kits of assemblies encompassing receptacles and non-metallic faceplates that cover the receptacle face where the plate cannot be installed on any other receptacle shall be permitted. Letter E, receptacles in countertops. So receptacle assemblies for installation in countertop surfaces shall be listed for countertop applications. Receptacle assemblies for protection for personnel in accordance with Chapter 2.10.1.8. Such assemblies shall be permitted to be listed as GFCI receptacle assemblies for countertop applications. F, receptacles in work surfaces. So receptacles assemblies in GFCI receptacles assemblies listed for work surface or countertop applications shall be permitted to be installed in work surfaces. So G, receptacle orientation. So receptacles shall not be installed in a face-up position or on countertop surfaces on work surfaces unless listed for countertop or work surfaces applications. So receptacles in setting areas and other similar surfaces. So in setting areas or similar surfaces, receptacle shall not be installed in a face-up position unless the receptacle is any of the following. So first, part of an assembly listed as furniture of the power distribution unit if cord and plug connected. So second is the part of an assembly listed either as household furnishing or as commercial furnishing. So, third is listed either as receptacle assembly for countertop applications or as a GFCI receptacle assembly for countertop applications. So, and the last, installed in listed floor box. So, exposed terminals receptacles shall be enclosed so that live wiring terminals are not exposed to contact. G. Voltage between adjacent devices. A receptacle shall not be grouped or ganged in enclosures with other receptacles, snap switches or similar devices unless they are arranged so that the voltage between adjacent devices does not exceed 300 volts, or unless they are installed in enclosures equipped with identified securely installed barriers between adjacent devices. Chapter 4.6.1.6, so receptacle faceplates or cover plates. Receptacle faceplates shall be installed so as to completely cover the opening and sit against the mounting surface. So receptacle faceplates mounted inside the box having a resist-mounted receptacle shall effectively enclose the opening seats of the mounting surface. Thickness of metal faceplates. So metal faceplates shall be ferrous metal not less than 0.76 mm in thickness or of non-ferrous metal not less than 1.02 mm thickness. So grounding, so metal faceplates shall be grounded. So C. Faceplates of insulating material. Faceplates of insulating material shall be non-combustible and not less than 2.54 mm in thickness but shall be permitted to be less than 2.54 in thickness if formed or reinforced to provide adequate mechanical strength. D. Receptacle faceplates or cover plates with integral night light and or USB charger. A flash device cover plate that additionally provides a night light and or class 2 output connectors shall be listed and constructed such that night light and or class 2 circuitry is integral with the flash device. So chapter 4.6.1.7, so attachment plugs and cords, connectors and plug surface devices. All attachments, plugs, cords, connectors, and plug surface devices, inlets and outlets shall be listed and marked with the manufacturer's names or identification and voltage and ampere rating. So A. Construction of attachment plugs and cord connectors. So attachment plugs and cord connectors shall be constructed so that there are no exposed current carrying parts except the prongs, blades, or pins. The cover for the wire terminations shall be a part that is essential for the operation of an attachment plugs, connector, or dead front construction. Chapter 4.6.1.9, so receptacles in damp or wet locations. So A. Damp locations. A receptacle installed outdoors in a location protected from the weather or an other damp location shall have an enclosure for the receptacle that is weatherproof when the receptacle is covered or attachment plug cap not inserted and receptacle cover closed. An installation suitable for wet location shall also be considered suitable for damp location. A receptacle shall be considered to be in a location protected from the weather where located under roof, open porch, canopies, marks, and like, and will not be subjected to a bearing rain or running all 15 and 20 ampere, 125 and 250 volt non-locking receptacles shall be listed with a resistant type. So B. Wet locations. So receptacle of 15 and 20 amperes in a wet locations. So receptacles of 15 installed in a wet location shall have an enclosure that is waterproof whether or not attachment plug cap is inserted. An outlet box hood installed for this purpose shall be listed and shall be identified as extra duty. Other listed products, enclosures, or assemblies providing with weatherproof protection that do not utilize an outlet box need to be marked extra duty. Exceptions for this. So 15 and 20 ampere or 125 to 250 volt receptacles installed in a wet locations and subject to retain high pressures pre-washing shall be permitted to have an enclosure that is weatherproof and the attachment plug is removed. All 15 and 20 amperes current receptacles. 2 other receptacles. So all other receptacles installed in a wet location shall comply with B2A or B2B. So A is a receptacle installed in a wet location where the product intended to be plugged into it is not attended while in use. Shall have an enclosure that is weatherproof with the attachment plug cap inserted or removed. Hello? Ha? Hindi ko lang alam, kuya.